Back in March, we told you about the training of local law enforcement across the country when it comes to counterterrorism and spotting homegrown terrorism policies. Now, thanks to reporters who went on the inside, examined the teachers, the so-called experts, we learned that these lessons were incredibly biased and ultimately led to police racial profiling, or worse, as journalist Joshua Craze explains, inciting fear into those who wouldn't normally do things like think of all Muslims in a negative light.
But the problem when you're teaching someone about Islam, if they don't know anything about it, is that they go for the guy who makes you laugh the most or makes you most scared. So some of the saddest scenes that we came across when we were doing this investigation were people who said, you know, Joshua, I never realized that Islam was a threat until I was in this training. But now I know, and now I know to watch out for those guys. So a whole bunch of people who didn't previously fear Islam or worried about it suddenly became incredibly motivated towards becoming vigilantes in their communities.
Well, now Spencer Ackerman from Wired's Danger Room has uncovered similar types of counterterrorism training on a national level. Ackerman acquired a course handbook used to train FBI counterterrorism officers at the FBI training ground in Quantico, Virginia. And pretty much everything about it should be sending off warning signals. Now, the course focuses solely on the threat of terror from Muslims. It encourages trainees to focus on a Muslim's religion as the sole factor in determining if they might be a terrorist. And what's worse, use of the word radical, that isn't even a focus in the handbook. Because according to these teachings, even mainstream Muslims are terrorist sympathizers. So basically, every Muslim likes terrorists, according to them. Now, the handbook also labels the Prophet Muhammad as a cult leader. And the course was taught by William Gawthorpe. This is a man who has said in the past that Muhammad's mindset is a source for terrorism. And he was also an important figure in the birther movement. So that should just give you a little bit of an idea of what we're working with here. Now, Gawthorpe advises that basically all Muslims, even mainstream American Muslims, are potential terrorists. He also explains that the more devout a Muslim is about their religion, the more dangerous they are to the U.S. Now, within the handbook, they have this really super scientific line graph that demonstrates Gawthorpe's ideology by showing that, see, Christians and Jews, the more devout they are, well, this is the nonviolent, the less violent they are, as you can see. But if we look at Islam, Muslims, the more devout they become, they basically just stick along the violent line all the way through. So I think it's pretty safe to assume, with members of federal law enforcement being taught that there is no such thing as a moderate Muslim, that's going to affect the FBI's relationship with the Muslim community. We told you about several cases where FBI agents have gone to undercover and infiltrate mosques across the country and potentially entrap individuals in terror attack plots. And as Spencer Ackerman explained on Rachel Maddow last night, these latest revelations could further the damage, the already strained ties between the Muslim and American communities.
They're very concerned about two related issues, which are counterterrorism and civil rights. And those two go hand in hand because, as you remember, the great Jimmy McNulty said on The Wire, a cop isn't anything without his sources of information. And unless there's community buy-in in American Muslim communities and other communities around this country, law enforcement can't do its job. It can't learn about what's happening, and it can't be alert to threats.
Now, when the FBI was questioned about this handbook, they just called it rudimentary, and they claim that their practices have since changed. That's despite the fact that these concepts were still being taught in March of this year. So with this little glimpse inside some of the downright offensive, if not incredibly stupid, training practices of the FBI, is it time for the government to take action, call for some change? Now, a few politicians already have, and this was actually before the FBI training materials were leaked. Senators Joe Lieberman and Susan Collins have questioned the qualifications of those training our feds in counterterrorism. But now that this information is out there, the FBI is probably going to be forced to do some serious damage control. Not only has this leak unveiled a huge violation of Americans' First Amendment rights, the freedom of religion, but it also encourages members of our highest level of law enforcement to view all Muslims as terrorists, which is not only detrimental to the rights of those individuals, but also to the safety of this country. So I encourage you to visit Danger Room's site to see all the graphs that are included in this handbook, but I'm going to warn you, you probably won't like what you see.